Good evening, residents of Everett, Washington. I'd like to call to order the Everett City Council meeting of October 19th, 2022, and welcome everyone into the City Council chambers. It actually feels like a real old-fashioned council meeting to me tonight. The City Council is conducting our weekly council meeting hybrid. This allows us to reach members of our community who wish to participate via Zoom or those who wish to attend in person in the chambers. It is our hope to continue this format to be as accessible as possible to our community. For those who wish to participate in the future via Zoom, you may find the public comment registration form on a link on the City of Everett website under the City Council Department. Once you click on the link to provide comment via Zoom, you will fill out a form and that will get submitted to our county or our council administrator. And then you'll receive an email confirmation with the Zoom link and the phone number to the meeting. Participants must submit this form at least 30 minutes prior to the meeting. Forms submitted after that time will not receive the Zoom link and phone number to speak, but they may still participate the day of the meeting or evening by coming in person. Please note, we do not allow comments on any kind of campaigning, whether for or against ballot measures or candidates running for office, and we do not accept comments focused on personal matters that are unrelated to city business. Clerk, will you please take the roll?
Mayor Franklin.
Here.
Vice President Toohey.
Here.
Councilmember Ryan.
Here.
Councilmember Vogely.
I think she's just running late.
5 minutes. Councilmember Zarlingo.
Here.
Councilmember Fossey. Here. Councilmember Schwab.
Here.
President Stonecipher, sorry.
Here. I'd like to ask Councilmember Schwab, will you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And thank you. Councilmember Vogely's not here, so I'll ask Councilmember Ryan, will you please read the land acknowledgement?
Yes. The City Council wishes to acknowledge the original inhabitants of this place, the Snohomish people and their successors, the Tulalip tribes. Since time immemorial, they have hunted, fished, gathered on, and taken care of these lands and waters. We respect their sovereignty, their right to self-determination, and honor their sacred spiritual connection with the land and water. We will strive to be honest about our past mistakes and bring about a future that includes their people, stories, and voices to form a more just and equitable society.
Thank you. Do I hear a motion for approval of the minutes of October 12th, 2022?
So moved.
Seconded?
We have a motion and a second to approve the minutes. Clerk, will you please take the roll?
Councilmember Toohey.
Yes.
Councilmember Ryan.
Yes.
Councilmember Zarlingo.
Yes.
Councilmember Fossey. Yes. Councilmember Schwab.
Yes.
President Stonecipher.
Yes. Good evening, Mayor Franklin.
Yeah, good evening, President Stonecipher, and I share your enthusiasm. It's great to see a packed chamber again, so thank you all for coming to share your public comments tonight. And I'll apologize in advance. I do have to leave early, so if you see me duck out, that is because I have to get home. So thank you.
Thank you. Angie, do we have anyone signed up to speak for public comment this evening?
We do. We first have a written comment from Orangina Noel, and this has been provided to council, administration, and to the clerk to be part of the permanent record. We have 2 individuals signed up to speak via Zoom and numerous individuals here. And we'll start off with our virtual speakers first. So we'll start with Trevor. Trevor, if you would like to turn on your camera and unmute and state your full name and city of residence for the record. And remember to limit your comments to 3 minutes, and I'll let you know when you have 30 seconds remaining. And you can go ahead.
Hello, my name is Trevor Gendum. I live in Warm Beach. I'm a RN at Providence Regional Medical Center in Everett. I'm here today to continue to talk about the staffing shortage that we're facing. I think we see this, we have nurses there, and we're seeing a continuation of similar problems. We just have a little more data. I'm part of the staffing committee at Providence, and we recently we found out that they were not collecting any staffing exit interview data. I think anyone who was there on August 3rd saw from leadership at the time that they didn't quite know those numbers, and now we know it's because they weren't collecting any at all. We were able to get a snapshot of some data related to turnover in August and July, We didn't get any for the rest of the year, which would be really nice to see a comprehensive year-long look. But we saw that the first year turnover rate is nearly 45% in July, and then it went to 41% in August. These numbers are astronomical. Looking at Providence's own data, where they look at turnover, first-year turnover, and what it means, what we see is that 25% is at risk. That means that there needs to be an intervention right away. We were at 45%, over 40% for those 2 months, which is really a shocking number. And just looking at what we can see from Providence, I was able to find some data that it's a $90,000 turnover cost per caregiver. So each one that you lose, that's $90,000. It's extremely expensive to lose caregivers. And the broader impact that we see from first year turnover, we see an increase in absenteeism and accidents. We see decreased ability to attract and retain new caregivers, a loss of patient referrals, disruption in hospital flow, which we've seen through unit closures, room closures, and everything we're seeing down in the ED. We also see lower team morale, longer patient stays, and a greater number of hospital-acquired illnesses. So these are some things that could affect the community here as we keep going into this shortage. Another thing I wanted to talk about was if anybody heard about what happened in
30
Kitsap.
seconds, Trevor.
The firefighters down there were able to help out the ED in Kitsap, but the ED had to call the firefighters because there was only 5 RNs on duty, and their ED was getting overwhelmed. Luckily, the firefighters were able there to help, but that clearly isn't the best case scenario for care for patients. Hopefully, it's not something that we see here. Thank you guys for my time. Have a good one.
Thank you, Trevor. Next, we have Megan Dunn. Megan, if you would like to unmute and state your full name and city of residence for the record. And just a reminder, you have 3 minutes to speak, and I'll let you know when you have 30 seconds remaining.
Thank you. My name is Megan Dunn. I am calling from the Lowell neighborhood. I'm speaking on behalf of Everett Districts Now, and not in any other, not representing my council position. So Everett Districts Now has 4 concerns with the districting process that was put forth. First and foremost was the lack of education and the lack of background that was provided both to the commission members, the districting commission, and also the general public. Did the commission understand that they could change the map in any way, or were they told and pressured to only make small changes? We also felt that they were not informed of the process and the history of districts, and also they weren't informed of the public input from 2021 from the previous districting commission. When I attended, the District 2 meeting, no background was provided, no handouts were given except for maps that did not have street names. So we were given maps in different sizes. One was a previous map and one showed the changes. There were no street maps no street names on the maps, and there was no background provided on the process of districts or even the next steps. Secondly, we felt there was inappropriate influence by the mayor's staff to push an agenda to the council members by being involved in that commission as if they were a commission member. They asked questions, they interrupted, they provide commentary, and they acted as if they were a commission member, which was giving unfair influence from the mayor's side. Third, there was also a missed opportunity. The districting master actually provided an east-west split map, and there was no option to even consider different types of layouts for the districts prior to the last meeting where they approved that final map. So they didn't provide options for the public to consider different types of maps. They provided one map with no street names, and then completely ignored both the Council of Neighborhoods recommendation to have an east-west split and also majority of public input requesting the consideration for an east-west split. The fourth issue is that public input was not accepted prior to even hearing the first or having the first map. There was not a process to allow public input before the commission started and considered their slight changes. Additionally, you must follow the Open Public Meetings Act when you have a quorum of commission members present.
I have to ask
And
you
we
to wrap up, Megan. Sorry.
Okay, we understand that this will be approved on consent, but we feel like this was a missed opportunity for public outreach and engagement. Thank you.
Thank you. So next we'll move to those in the chambers here, and we're going to start with Catherine, if you could come to the podium. So if you could please state your full name and city of residence, and you have 3 minutes, and I'll let you know when you have 30 seconds left.
Okay.
Thank you.
Catherine Ann Delden. I live in the city of Everett, and I'm an emergency room nurse at Providence. And I came today because I wanted to discuss the moral injury that's taking place now at work, not just with the nurses, but with the community and the doctors and just everyone there. My last few shifts have been admitting anywhere from like 10 to 15 patients in the ER, and then have like up to 40 other patients waiting to be seen. Now, these are patients that have already been seen by a nurse and seen by a doctor, and they've been deemed sick enough that they need a hospital bed, and we're putting them back out in the lobby to wait for anywhere from 5 to 12 hours. We are giving them treatment out there, but they're not getting the compassionate care that I want to give as a nurse or that they deserve in this community or any community. They should have a bed, they should have privacy, and it's just getting a lot harder to manage. Patients are getting upset and they want to know why they're having to stay in the lobby, and it breaks my heart as a nurse knowing that there are dozens of empty beds inside of the hospital that they should be in that they can't be in. Because Providence is refusing to incentivize nurses and pay a fair competitive wage so that we can staff those rooms and treat our community with the respect and dignity that they deserve. That's all I have. Thank you.
Sorry. So please state your full name and city that you reside in, and you have 3 minutes.
Hello, my name is Heidi DeBoge. I live in Lake Stevens. I'm a nurse at Providence. The rhetorical question, if all of your friends jumped off a cliff, would you jump too? Is meant to test the power of social influence. We've raised our voices regarding patient safety at Providence, and we've been constantly dismissed with the statement, all hospitals are this bad. So let me tell you how bad it was this week. This past week, our behavioral health unit in the ER had an 8-to-1 nurse-to-patient ratio. This ratio is double the agreed-upon staffing plan. This behavioral health area typically includes patients who are combative, suicidal, or homicidal. We've seen a massive increase of successful escapes from this unit. I can guess an average of 2 to 3 mental health patients a week are escaping that pose a danger to themselves and our community. But don't worry, this is happening everywhere. This week's paramedics lined our walls for up to 4 hours waiting for medical care. Their patients are physically reaching out to me, begging me to help them, but I'm already drowning with my current patient load and haven't been able to have a break all day. But don't worry, this is happening everywhere. With over 50 admitted patients boarding downstairs in the ER with only 78 ER beds, we have several of these admitted patients stranded in our lobby without proper medical care or assigned nurse. One of these patients was boarding for 16 hours and 56 minutes in our lobby, sitting in a chair. But don't worry, this is happening everywhere. This week's modified trauma, strokes, heart attacks are called overhead along with no room, meaning there's no place to put them. Whoever can go, goes, and we pray that one of our coworkers is available to go. This is sloppy medicine. The bar shouldn't be this low, but don't worry, this is happening everywhere. As we heard, a local nurse called 911 this past week because they only have 5 nurses for their entire ER. Imagine how desperate and abandoned these poor nurses must feel that the only thing they could do was call 911. But don't worry, this is happening everywhere. To our CEO, Christy Carrington, are you really okay with this? Are you really not going to do anything to try and retain your nurses? We are still hemorrhaging nurses, and our new CEO has stood by and answered us in silence, just like our last CEO. No hazard pay, no retention bonuses, and they refused to negotiate our contract early. This message is meant for Everett Mayor Cassie Franklin. I want you to be heavily suspicious and question what information or lack thereof our new CEO is providing you. You should be asking questions. Remember that you wouldn't know about any of this if it weren't for the nurses at Providence. The nurses at Providence need more support from you, and I'm asking for it today. We need accountability from our CEO and upper management. We want them boots on the floor during these nights and critical staffing. What I do know is that the nurses do not know who's advocating for them. We need to set a standard. We need to be the first to say we can do better and decide not to jump off the cliff just because everyone else is. Thank you.
Thank you, Heidi. Next, we have Dana, if you'd like to come to the podium. Please state your full name and city of residence, and I'll let you know when you have 30 seconds left.
All right, thank you. My name is Dana Robison. I live in Bothell, but I've worked in Everett at Providence Medical Center for almost 10 years now. I came with some of my fellow nurses to a Snohomish County Council meeting back in August to talk a little bit about how the staffing crisis was affecting us in our labor and delivery unit. And I wanted to make clear today that our situation has worsened severely since that time. The L&D department at Providence Everett is the second busiest L&D unit in the state, performing over 4,000 deliveries a year, many of which are high-risk patients with multiple complicating factors and a high level of medical needs. Our unit provides the highest level of acuity available for pregnant, laboring, and postpartum patients and their babies between Everett and the Canadian border. In 1998, Providence merged with General Hospital in Everett and made an agreement to provide OB care for the citizens of Everett. Now, due to a continuing hemorrhage of nursing staff that has yet to slow, the assessment of many of our nurses, OBs, and midwives is that our unit will likely have to close its doors in the very near future if something drastic is not done right now to stymie this exodus of nurses. That very thing has already happened to our pediatrics unit. It's gone. Most shifts, we have less than 50% of the nurses needed to safely run our unit. Our new executive leadership team continues to suggest the solution to our staffing crisis is to, quote, be creative and do better teamwork. As nurses, we have worked tirelessly to try to ensure our patients' safety at these critical staffing levels by working extra shifts, foregoing our breaks, staying late after our 12-hour shifts, sometimes for over 6 hours or more, and canceling, delaying, and stopping labors and inductions whenever possible to protect the most unstable patients at any given time. Still, on most shifts, especially at night, we are not able to safely handle the patients who simply walk through the door needing care, let alone to schedule medically necessary C-sections or inductions for patients with high-risk delivery needs. Many of the medical providers who deliver at our hospital have stated that they no longer feel that it is in their patients' best interest to deliver their babies at our hospital, but many of the patients have no other options available for where to receive care. To close, I'd like to share a few quick numbers to illustrate our staffing issue. Based on core staffing needs for our average patient volume, we need a staff of approximately 57 full-time night shift nurses. And as of October 6th, we had approximately 41. That doesn't actually sound too bad, right? We have about 72% of the nurses that we need to staff night shift. We just need to get about 15 more nurses and we're good, right? Here's the kicker. Since the beginning of 2020, 69 night shift nurses have resigned their position on our unit. That means that in less than 3 years, we've had our current staff of night shift nurses almost completely turn itself over twice. We have lost over 121% of the nurses we need to adequately staff our night shift in that time frame. And since I gathered these numbers, several more nurses have tendered their resignations. We have heard essentially zero ideas or plans from our executive leadership on how they are actually addressing this problem. We are witnessing firsthand Everett's beloved labor and delivery unit in its death throes. How is this possible? We are devastated, we are beyond exhausted, and we don't know what else to do. How can our unit continue to function at all with no help or even a plan from our executives? The answer, I guess, is actually quite simple. We can't. Thank you.
Thank you, Dana. Next, we have Rhonda. Please state your full name and city of residence, and you have 3 minutes to speak.
Hi, my name is Rhonda Shively, and I live in Lake Stevens. I am an obstetrical nurse. I do triage as well as labor and delivery, and I also do relief postpartum charge nurse. You've heard a lot from our Colby campus nurses about how dire their situation is there, but I'm here to tell you that the maternity center is no better. Our center houses triage, labor and delivery, postpartum, and the NICU, and we're in a constant state of emergency. The last 3 years have been bad, but the last 2 months have been the worst I have ever seen. 4 years ago, I was proud to work at Providence, and now I hesitate to tell people where I work. I'm proud of the work that I do, and I'm beyond proud of my coworkers, but it's getting really hard to be proud of an organization that constantly puts its profits above the health and wellness of the community. I was recently provided with a report showing that our day shift has a 17 nurse deficit and our night shift has a 16 nurse deficit. However, that was 2 weeks ago, and we've received at least 5 resignations since then. Because of the lack of staff on our unit, we have to delay medically indicated inductions, sometimes by several days. This places both mom and baby at risk for further complications, and in a worst-case scenario could result in a maternal death or a fetal demise. Our triage unit should be staffed with 3 triage nurses, but lately we've been so short-staffed that 1 nurse in triage is the new norm. We've even had a few moments where we had 0 nurses in triage, meaning that the only warm body in there was our unit secretary, who has absolutely no medical training. This is incredibly dangerous. Our other triage nurses have told me horror stories that have happened when they've been alone, including obstetrical patients who have come in to rule out a stroke, or putting babies on the monitor to find fetal bradycardia, requiring an emergency C-section, and they have no one around them to help them perform intrauterine resuscitation measures. My coworkers and I have been verbally abused by patients and patient family members for being unable to provide proper care in a timely manner because of poor staffing. A Kitsap County nurse was recently quoted as saying she feels like she's screaming into the void, and I don't know if I've ever related to anything more. We keep being told by administration that we're being heard, but we've yet to see any significant changes. We do not feel, in good faith, that Providence has made any realistic changes to improve our staffing situation, and the situation has become beyond dire. We need incentives for seasoned nurses to stay at the bedside, including hazard pay. We need travelers to fill in the current gaps, and we need competitive wages and benefits for new nurses who want to work at Providence. I want to thank the Everett City Council for continuing to let us voice our safety concerns. I hope our new interim CEO and CNO, Christy and Michelle, are listening right now, and they know that we're not backing down until our community is safe.
Thank you, Rhonda. Next, we have Kelly. If you could come to the podium. And please state your full name and city of residence, and you've been extended for a 5-minute speaking time.
Yes. Thank you. My name's Kelly. I live here in Everett. It has been over 3 months since I first came to City Council to share my concerns of the unsafe staffing at Providence. 3 months since we were told it was going to have to get worse before it gets better. 2 months since Janine, Darren, and Dr. Cook came to City Council. Janine has been replaced and Darren has been replaced. There was a glimmer of hope that with the new CEO starting her career as a nurse, that we would have someone who would advocate for safe staffing, for patient safety, but now we know their new marketing strategy. Janine and Darren may have been too honest regarding the staffing issue and the financial crisis, and yet not honest enough, costing them their job. But at least they didn't tell nurses it was their negative attitudes causing other nurses to quit. At least they didn't tell nurses that they can't continue to live in the trauma, they have to move forward, as if the trauma isn't still happening every single day. At least they didn't tell nurses they would have to get creative and solve the staffing crisis themselves. That's our new leaders' marketing strategy, and they wonder why nurses continue to quit. Last time I was here, there were thoughts of, well, if we can get the 100 patients who need to go to nursing homes out, that will fix the problem. Well, we are now down to 40, and we can't use that as an excuse anymore. In the ED, we continue to board 30 or more patients with 30 or more in the lobby, waiting every day. We have begun to admit patients in the lobby. There is no hiding from what nurses have known all along. It's a toxic work environment that does not value its nurses or the lives of the patients. There is the thought that we can educate and produce more nurses. That will fix the problem. Let me remind you, in 2021, there were 120,000 nurses licensed and only 59,000 were actually working, which is more than likely decreased in 2022. Nurses with less than 3 months of experience are taking up to 8 patients in the ED, doing the work of up to 3 nurses while only being paid about $30 an hour. How much do you want to bet in that 1 to 2 years they leave the field of nursing and find something better, something that's not toxic, and that doesn't value nurses nor the lives of its patients? Hospitals only care about making money. Providence is not the exception, they just excel at it. Don't believe me? Then ask Google how much money did Providence lose in the stock market in 2022? They almost lost $1 billion. Your next question should be, why is a hospital that doesn't pay taxes using your money to invest in the stock market not investing in its business to provide health care to the community? Almost $1 billion. That's $1 billion they could have invested in hiring and retaining nurses, but they didn't. One would think, how could this possibly hold up to their so-called mission of striving to improve the health and quality of life for their community? Still don't believe me? Ask Google, did Providence pay a marketing firm $45 million to figure out how to get as much money from patients as possible? Did they then turn those patients into collection agencies, even if patients who were not required to pay? Did they correct their ways on their own, or did it take a second lawsuit from the Attorney General of Washington, a second lawsuit for their violation of the charity law? No surprise, but no, they did not correct their ways on their own. Instead, they sent an email to every single employee telling us it's absurd that they would never do something like that. What do you believe? That's $45 million they could have invested in hiring and retaining nurses, but they didn't. There were whispers that Providence might go into contract negotiations early, and then those whispers turned into an email of no, we will not, and that our wages are market competitive. Are they just as competitive with, say, Boeing, Amazon, Microsoft, or is it CEOs, the only ones allowed to have their wages match other industries? CEOs that take the money invested in the stock market and then lose $1 billion. House Bill 1868, a law that would have penalized hospitals for violating safe staffing ratios, didn't make it past the state Senate. How much did hospitals spend to lobby against that bill, making it sure it didn't make it to the governor's desk? Money they could have used to invest in hiring and retaining nurses, but they didn't. Every nurse in this state should be pissed, and you should be speaking up. I invite doctors to start speaking up and supporting nurses because you should be pissed as well. Every elected official should be pissed and asking, what can we do to fix this? To anybody who has had to sit in our lobby, be admitted from our lobby, should be pissed. Anybody stuck in a hallway bed should be pissed. Anybody who had to spend days in the ED should be pissed. To the women who have to wait up to 5 days to give birth, you should be pissed. To the parents who have to go to Seattle Children's because the pediatric wing at Providence is still closed, you should be pissed.
30 seconds, Kelly.
To the people who lay in their own urine for hours, don't get their daily medications, don't even get to brush their teeth, you should be pissed. And then you should look at your bill with a fine-tooth comb and see if they charged you the same exact price as if you had a bed in the hospital. And then maybe you should be calling a lawyer. Then you should reach out to your elected officials and ask them, what are they going to do about it? Nurses are mad, and we are telling you this is not normal. This should never be normal. It's your hospital, it's your health care, it's your community. Don't let them tell you, rich men in suits, that you aren't worth spending the money on. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Steve, if you could please come to the podium. And please state your full name and city of residence for the record, and you have 3 minutes to speak.
Good evening, my name is Steve Ose. I'm a resident of Everett, Washington, District 2. I'd like to speak about transit, but before I do, I'd like to take a moment. I used to work at Providence. It was about 26 years ago, and it sounds like the problems that we had back then have grown. And I would like to get known that I support the support that you're requesting. Everett Transit is facing a situation that pops up every 5, 10, 15 years where officials either at community transit, and usually that's where they start at, sometimes it starts here in Everett, they feel like it's a good idea to have a merger between our two agencies. Years ago, it was asked if Everett would run community transit, and we didn't want to. We wanted to focus on Everett Transit. We wanted to focus on our city, within our boundaries. And that's what we did. And community transit went off on their own, and they started growing, and was within a few years, they were putting forth the idea of let's have a merger. We can be more efficient that way. And that was turned down. And then it came up again and again. And now it's come up again, and there's some research that's being done. It's no better an idea today than it was originally for the citizens of Everett. Could that be a better idea for maybe the region or the county? It might benefit them, but it doesn't benefit the citizens of Everett. Our sales tax doubles on the transit portion. We lose control of our agency. It's not better for us, the citizens of Everett. And yes, I am a citizen of Everett. I'm the president of the union for our local. And beyond that, being a citizen, I want to see us do well. I want to see our city do well. Transit puts a lot of money into our budget. The budget that you guys get to work and spend, we're putting money into that. We don't take
30
any money
seconds,
out. We put money into it. And the last I heard, we're running a deficit in the city. So to take away an entity that is putting money into the city, well, that just by itself doesn't make sense. Then to be doubling our tax, and that new tax we're gonna have, that money's not gonna be spent in Everett. That's gonna go out into the county. There's no way community transit, who doesn't really do any local service,
Steve, that's 3 minutes.
they're not gonna do service in Everett. They're gonna do it, they're gonna spend that money out in the county somewhere.
Thank you, Steve. We have to wrap it up.
So I encourage all of you, if any of you want to contact me and talk to me some more, please feel free to do so. I work for the city, you know how to contact me. Please feel free to do that. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Steve. Next, we have Paula, if you could please come to the podium. And if you could please state your full name and city of residence, and just a reminder, you have 3 minutes to speak. Okay?
Okay, thank you. My name is Paula Townsell. I am a 40-year resident of Everett's District 3 and was signature gatherer for districting. I believe a major mistake has been made and should be corrected. The original map was drawn out of habit in a traditional approach, left to right, top to bottom. Unfortunately, it did not reflect the will of the community then or now. The real mistake is that engagement was suppressed and often ignored by the process. Significant comment has been made when the original districting map became public, and it quickly became a rallying point for Delta, Riverside, and Lowell neighborhoods in asking for a river district, an east-west Broadway divide, as some call it. But residents were greatly ignored because the process was already underway, and it was too late to change. Extensive public engagement in district and redistricting is a pillar of EDN. That is, public engagement from throughout our city and throughout the process. Redistricting failed to provide the envisioned engagement. When finally invited into public comment, it was only after the completion of the commission's work with their drafted map. Their discussion and votes confirmed there was no meaningful opportunity for residents to impact the outcome of district layouts. Therefore, to be completely honest with residents, with this process, we can expect the same layouts in perpetuity. The commission failed to seek input early in the process when presumably an east-west boundary could change and could have been vetted throughout engagement instead of after it was too late for actual consideration. Where in redistricting do you think residents will be offered an opportunity in 10 years? Again, it will be too late. It is imperative that this council take the important steps to right the wrong, acknowledge the community's steadfast desire for an east-west Broadway divide. I'm urging this city council to recognize the redistricting commission ignored or erred in withholding early public engagement and failed to honor and reflect the will of the residents. The First District Commission failed to gain a unanimous vote on the district map for just this reason. It was a mistake to draw District 1 without an east-west boundary, and if perpetuated, it will absolutely erode public trust. In the final Redistricting Commission's meeting, we learned that residents provided extensive requests for the split at their only opportunity. The district master stated There was a very passionate cry for an east-west split. It was the lone outcry for change heard from the public, consistently
30
echoed
seconds.
throughout the meeting input. The layout of the districts is only 2 years old, and yet a redraw, a fix-it, if you will, is absolutely warranted. As the seasoned and highly qualified district master told commissioners in regards to the east-west split, if that's what the community wants, there is no reason not to give what the community would like. I urge you to reject the proposed 2022 redistricting map as it is fatally flawed. Thank you.
Thank you, Paula. Next, we have Mary. If you could please come to the podium. There you are. Please state your full name and city of residence, and you have 3 minutes to speak.
Sure, thanks. Mary Rollins, I live in the city of Everett, District 2. I don't have prepared a statement, as my friends from Everett Districts Now did. I just have a couple of thoughts going forward. So it was stated last week that Everett Districts Now wanted this process to look the way it did. Everett Districts Now never wanted the community to be left out of the process. And that, to me, is the biggest problem. The community was not able to give input. The community didn't get to choose the people on the first districting commission. They were chosen by council, as this redistricting commission was. One of the people chosen had just stepped off of city council. One of the people chosen had been on the first districting commission. And those two voices, I feel like, had an outsized influence on how the rest of the kind of newbies on the redistricting commission acted. And I really feel that that input was just ill-advised. I really hope going forward, I know this is a done deal because we wrote it up, I'm putting air quotes, we wrote it up that way when we wanted districting, that it would be just finalized by this city council. But the way that the finger was put onto these decisions by people in power, whether it was intentional or unintentional or nefarious or just any way you want to look at it, I just think that it just was wrong. And I really hope going forward that changes will be made in how the redistricting commission is chosen. You know, especially now that a lot of the people on the council have been chosen as a district person. I really hope the district people now will really look at their part of the city as their part of the city. I think that was the big call here for districts, that we have our own council person that we can turn to. I know I'm kind of jumping around, but I really feel like we put a
30
lot of
seconds.
work into this in Everett districts. And to see it played out with just letting go of community input, there was just something wrong about it. It doesn't feel right. And as much spin as I heard at the last council meeting about how Everett Districts Now wanted it that way, it wasn't like that. We didn't feel that way. We don't feel that way. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mary. Next, we have Dominique. If you could please come to the podium. And please state your full name and city of residence, and you have 3 minutes to speak. Oh, no, turn that back. Yeah, there we go.
Thank you. My name is Dominique Elakil. I live in a house located in 2712 Summit Avenue. I moved there and purchased the house in March of this year. Lately, I've been having 3 ongoing issues. First, with homeless people living right next door to me, drugs, and the waste management that is across the street from me, which is all the garbage comes to my yard. So this is an ongoing issue that I've been calling the cops like almost every other day. You know, and sometimes they show up, sometimes not. Even when they show up, they talk to them, they move for a few hours, and they come back again. Now, me and my kids and my wife, we live in fear there, you know, because it's just like, you know, they get scared. They don't want to be there anymore. So I'm here, you know, to address this issue, and I wanted this to be resolved as soon as possible, because it's just like, I don't know how to explain it, you know. It's just, I'm sick and tired, you know, dealing with this issue every single day. So that's all I can tell, you know. And just the waste management across the street, they not even have a barrier. They don't have anything or fence to cover all their waste. They all come to me, and I have to fill up like a big garbage, construction bags every other day, 2 or 3 construction garbage bag every week that I have to take to the dump myself, just from that company that is just right across the street from me. Plus the other guys, you know, all the homeless, they leave a T-shirt, their underwear, their shoes on my fence every single day. Drugs going down there, you know, there's a lot of, I don't know. I don't know what to tell you. At least I want a sign says no parking, so those people, they don't have to park there, you know, or something, you know, or you guys have to do something about it, you know. So that's all I can say. Thank you.
Thank you, Dominique.
So, President Stonecipher, I'm going to have to go, so I want to respond to just a couple things if I could take the liberty.
Sure.
First, I'd love for you to connect with Lori Cummings so we can get your contact information from the last speaker to make sure that our team is following up with you on your very specific concerns related to your property. I also want to thank all the Providence nurses that came and spoke, and I'm very much look forward to meeting with you all soon and hearing your concerns. I would urge you to bring your concerns to the Providence Board, who oversees the hospital. The city does not, but we all very much appreciate hearing from you. We want to support you the best we can, and so thank you for all your comments tonight. And then lastly, I'll hand this over to the city attorney, but I do want to address a little bit of what Megan Dunn shared, allegations that the mayor's office had some type of influence over the districting process. I take pretty strong offense to that. I had the exact same input as all of the council members, which is the process of appointing a district commissioner, and that's it. The rest of the process is very dictated by the law that was written, and staff followed that. And I attended 0 districting meetings. I honestly, sadly didn't pay attention to the process because I had other business to attend to as mayor of the city. So if folks want to have questions about that with me, they can address that directly. And then city attorney, if you want to add anything.
Well, I don't have much to add to that, but I will say that I was not at the meeting, so I didn't have any influence over the members. My role was to look at this from a distance and make sure that we followed all of the legal requirements, that the process was as it should have been, and it was. The members were appointed as the charter specifies they should be appointed. And the whole purpose of the districting commission is to get a bunch of smart people together who can think this through and make a good decision outside of politics. This isn't supposed to be back before the city council to be relitigated in a political forum. And at least one of the speakers pointed out very correctly that your job is simply to adopt the map as created. Article 2, Section 2.1 of our charter provides the City Council must adopt each districting commission's districting plan without modification or amendment. And that was very thoughtfully drafted at the time that this charter amendment was passed, and that's where we are now.
Thank you. Do we have any other speakers?
No, that concludes all public comments.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. We will move on to council comments and liaison reports, and we're going to start with Vice President Tui.
Thank you, Council President. Well, I just want to thank everyone who came tonight. There was a lot of very passionate voices. We really appreciate that. And it's very disappointing to hear that our situation at the hospital is deteriorating. This is very unprecedented, and I just feel for our whole community on this. So I'm hoping that things
Excuse me, sir. I'm going to have to ask you to leave unless you can be quiet. Thank you. I'm sorry. Please go on.
Kind of forgot where I was now. Anyway, I feel very sorry. It's very discouraging to hear that it has gotten worse. And I do hope that, meeting with the board and continue work with them and pressure from everyone else, that we'll get a resolution of some way to get things better for your situation. So thank you for being here.
Thank you. Councilmember Ryan.
Thank you. I too want to thank the speakers tonight on all 3 topics that were shared this evening, including what Mr. Dominique shared with us. Been working closely with the nurses these last, what has it been? Months now. And yeah, I had high hopes to hear that a new administration might have been more proactive to help turn the barge around in the river. And so I'm disappointed that that hasn't been happening. There had been an offer extended for council members to meet individually or no more than a quorum with administration. I'll definitely be taking up that offer to meet directly with them, and we'll be consulting with the nurses first on things that I should be keeping an ear out for and an eye out for before going into that meeting. So, and I have some other plans down the road for legislative asks and whatnot, so it's definitely not anything that I'm going to be putting to bed anytime soon. So thank you again for being here tonight. I wanted to mention for my updates, I attended the Lowell Neighborhood Association meeting on Monday. On Tuesday, I attended the library board meeting and also the Bayside Neighborhood Association meeting on Tuesday. And Director Hingston from Everett Transit shared the proposed service changes with the group, which was a really great presentation about the new routes and the additional service to the community through Everett Transit. So really proud of the work that Everett Transit's doing, especially in light of the money received from the Move Ahead Washington dollars to help expand access in the city. On Tuesday, I also toured the Snow Isle Tech Center down near Boeing, and it was just a really fascinating tour. I've heard about the Tech Center for a long time, so to see it in person was really great, and I was really thrilled about the work that they're doing to increase pipelines for work in the trades, including nursing and aviation and public safety and cybersecurity and you name it. So there's a lot of really great work that's happening there. So I'd love to explore ways that the city can support those pipelines into the workforce. I wanted to give folks a reminder that October is Emergency Preparedness Month, and tomorrow is the Great Washington Shakeout. So there's going to be a number of drills across the state and right here in Everett that are going to be facilitated by emergency management groups. So here in Everett, there will be some tsunami sirens that are going to be coming from the port, but it is just a drill. So if you happen to see some other exercises in place and if things look out of the ordinary, tomorrow, 10:20 at 10:20, it's for the Great Washington Shakeout. So there's also ways that you can participate as well if you want to check out online. Last, I wanted to mention that this week we've received a number of emails from Everett High School students from an English class that have asked for input on how to answer the question of if the American dream is still accessible in America. So I'll save everybody my diatribe about social media and income inequality and all that jazz, but I did want to mention 3 things for the students if they're listening, and I will be sending them an extra credit link to the meeting so that they can watch for civics engagement. Number 1, vote. 16 and 17-year-olds can sign up as future voters so that you automatically are registered to vote by the time you turn 18. And if you are 18 on or before November 8th, you can vote. Participate in local government. The boards and commissions here in the city are currently accepting applications, including the Youth Commission, so it's a great way for young people to have their voice heard, to make sure that the work that we're doing doesn't disproportionately impact young people and helps to provide pathways towards just a better Everett for people of all ages. And last but not least, go goals. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Councilmember Vogley.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you for being here, for reals. I will speak first on districting. I feel like last week I may have sounded flippant, and I apologize for that. I don't know if it sounded like that to you, but because of the process that we don't, as council members, we don't get to have anything to do with districting. That's where that came from, but I do absolutely care a lot about the process and how it went, and I was also a signature gatherer, so I just wanted to, it would be interesting to reject, but as you have heard, we cannot do that. So, and I don't know how to make it different or better for next time in 10 years. So I guess that's just what I have, and I wish I knew more or could say more. Catherine, Heidi, Dana, Rhonda, Kelly, person that I walked in on because I was late, I'm sorry. Thank you again for speaking again. I'm pissed. As we all should be, as you mentioned. It was funny, someone, I'm not gonna remember, I said, hey, oh, it was the pissed, okay. Check Google, and just before you said that, I hopefully discreetly checked Google to see if Providence was a Catholic, not-for-profit system. And I just thought that was interesting because, pro-life and stuff and money that goes towards life should probably be going towards nurses and staff and taking care of the life that we all are living right now, especially with, oh gosh, there's an AQI of 238. It went up 2 points since I was sitting here. That's air quality index because it is smoky out there, which brings me to more empathy of all the people that are outside not wearing masks. And I won't go into that right now, but still and more. Steve, thank you. I would encourage transit folks, or really anybody, to watch online now the Week Without Driving from Disability Mobility Initiative, and look it up on YouTube. And there's some interesting people talking a bit about transit. And speaking of districts and being a person, let's see, I'm District 4. Transportation Advisory Committee is tomorrow morning, and I'm very much involved with my district and safety. I'm not sure where this came from, but I'll also be meeting at South Precinct with a neighbor that has some serious traffic concerns. And I know that we all do. Holy moly, I know I do, but there's so much that we need to be doing. And I wish I could just give all the answers and all of the greatness, but it's not there. But I just want to say thank you for being here, and I will continue to do what I can when I can. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Zarlingo.
Well, first, in the interest of time, I won't repeat much of what others have said here. I do thank those who've come here to get involved. And one comment in particular, if boards are doing their proper job of governance, then that certainly is one group to seek aggressively to engage with respect to the managers or the people who manage Providence's managers. That kind of a governance should be there, and they should be completely aware of what's going on at your facility, and yet I don't think you should assume that. So certainly that's another avenue to pursue. Should be a potent one. But again, thank you all for getting involved and bringing your concerns here. That adds a lot of texture and depth to what we're looking at, including the questions with respect to the transit consolidation considerations. And I'd like to second what Councilmember Ryan said about the Snow Isle Tech Center. The Snow Isle Tech Skills Center, we were there together a couple of days ago, and it's a real gem in our community, in particular because in an environment where sometimes young people are presumed to be aimed for college if they're on the ball. I think that's not a fair or wise thing for everybody. And the Tech Skills Center, I think it's over 24 different areas that are skilled and highly paid areas, or well-paid family wage jobs, where there's real demand for their skills, not only from the classic stuff like you'd hear about Boeing, but a lot of the things in construction and in healthcare, information technology, a bunch of growth areas. It's a chance for people who don't want to pursue or can't afford some of the college trajectories to have some real opportunity and to stay here and contribute in our community. So I think that's a wonderful thing. I want to thank Wes Allen, the director there, and the organizer of the Boeing Company for supporting that. I think they said they're coming up on their 1,000th hire in the next few months from the skills centers, not just the Snow Isle ones. So it's been a real good opportunity in so many different areas. You know, Everett is a city of workers, and of all kinds of workers, from the high technology to the people who make our houses and make all of the built world work. So I'm happy to see that supported. And if you haven't, communicate that opportunity to the people you know, to the families you know, to make sure that that anybody who's a good fit for that gets that chance. This is, by the way, for high schoolers, juniors and seniors in high school. They go half a day to the Skills Center and half a day at the normal school. So for people who aren't a perfect fit for the trajectory for college or who want to get right out there and work, there are lots of great opportunities there. Really extraordinarily skilled teaching staff. And they teach a lot about professionalism that should help those people be great employees. So I want to express my gratitude for that and invite anybody to take the opportunity to get to know that there. Contact Director Allen. He can tell you all you need to know. That's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Fosse.
Thank you for everyone coming and speaking today. I too have received a lot of the emails from students regarding how accessible is the American dream, and it's a big question. So I appreciate you bringing it up. I still haven't quite been reflective on my answer to that, but I really, really appreciate the students reaching out to us and that assignment that they were giving from their teachers. To the nurses, thank you again for being here and sharing. I have spoken previously about how concerning I find it that now the department that does our labor and delivery, and it's the second busiest in the state, is now having the same crisis issues that our emergency department is having. And I've mentioned that I have had my personal issues with that back when my child was born and he ended up in the NICU, and they were understaffed years ago with that. And now that it's at crisis levels, and to hear that there's a delay in critical and life-saving C-sections and other types of care just really alarms me. Do we know, or have we heard any updates on the status of the new CEO or anybody coming to speak to council again to address any of these issues? Has anyone?
We are not inviting them back. We've got the update from them, so I think there was an offer for you to meet individually with them, and they are happy to meet with council members on an individual basis.
Okay. So, looks like that will be part of our path forward. I'm sorry that you are struggling through this and that you don't feel that they have been making any changes necessary that have been impactful to you. Thank you for sticking it out for the sake of this community. Yeah, I'll just leave it at that. As far as the Everett districts now, we don't have that option to reject the map. I had previously served on the prior commission and I was the only one that did not vote in favor of the map for the sake of lack of acknowledgement of the public input and outreach. I think that's well known. I understand that there is some concerns that folks would like to be addressed on how the redistricting commission is chosen, who is on that. So, David, I was wondering, what would be the process for starting to address that? And would that be something that we would call for here to look at that?
To change the process of appointing members of the commission?
Yeah, so
Would
like
take-
what?
Would take a charter amendment.
Okay, so it would be a charter amendment. And would that be worked through by council members or?
It's formulated by the council and put before the Charter Review Commission, which meets every 10 years, and then is put to a vote of the people.
Okay, okay. Maybe I'll just set up a meeting with you to
Yeah,
try to
glad to
deep
talk to
dive
you
into
about that.
that. And then I can maybe get some more information from some of the speakers tonight on specific issues and requests on that, for that. Other than that, I was able to attend the Delta Neighborhood Association meeting this last week, and they still have a lot of concerns regarding some of the activities at Jackson Park. And that definitely seems like something's ongoing, and we're aware of that. But that is it for my council comments tonight.
Thank you. Councilmember Schwab.
Yeah, too, I'd like to thank all the speakers tonight. And like I said last week to the nurses, that we're in this for the long haul. I think a lot of these problems, it took a while to get this bad. Unfortunately, it couldn't be slowed or stopped before it got to this point. So I would encourage you to keep your energy level and your enthusiasm for what you do and what you believe in, because I think we all do as a community have a lot of work to do. So I look forward to participating anyway and supporting any way I can. I am a little on another note, I'm a little disappointed with the Everett Now and some of the things I'm hearing. I was under the impression that we got to appoint the board. And I think I'm trying to my memory, everything's moved so quick, but I actually interviewed members, and then we made an appointment here in the council. And at that point, I just entrusted the members of that board. And I know the resumes and the interviews that I had, I thought were some really, really good options, good people in their community that were active. And I just entrusted the results of it just based on the people that we have on the board. So I'm actually a little surprised of some of the things I'm hearing. So thank you for expressing that. On another note, I didn't bring it up last time, but each year, Cascade High School and Everett High School football teams have a competition at Everett Memorial Stadium, and they call it the Battle of Broadway. And I got to participate in it, and I got to go out with Dr. Staltzman as he flipped the coin. He didn't do okay, but it worked. It was legal. And, it was just amazing. I got to spend some time with two principals, Kelly Shepard from Everett High School and Michael Takayoshi from Cascade. And I just want to tell the community I am thankful that we have those leaders that we do in place. They're absolutely amazing. And I can only begin to talk about the things that they have to work with. So be that, during that experience, principals have lots of responsibility, including ambassadorship. So I would like to make a point that the high school principal, Kelly Shepard from Everett High School, has anointed the local council member with a scarf. And I was wondering where the principal Takayoshi has been, and expecting a scarf from that school. Now, being a member of a district that has both high schools, sometimes you have to choose, and I'm not quite sure yet which is my favorite, but I'm beginning to think, So, being that said, I would like to, there's something really cool since I'm on the theme of the high schools, is every year Everett, they host an annual festival of bands, marching bands. It is people, high schools, 21 high schools from all over the state. There's going to be 4,000 people there. It's Saturday. It starts at 9. And Cascade High School is performing Into the Forest, at 3 p.m. I'd highly recommend that you guys show up, even though I didn't get a scarf from them. That's my report. Thank you.
Thank you. And which of those schools won the battle? I would probably guess it would be my mighty Bruins. I do not have a report tonight. I did want to take an opportunity to thank those who came to speak this evening. As I mentioned, I've been on council for a long time, and this is the first time we've had what felt like kind of a normal council meeting again, so I appreciate seeing people out in the audience and sharing concerns, criticisms, and compliments to the extent that we get those. And I'm glad and hope that you'll continue to come back. I'm not sure with the nursing situation. I'm familiar with that, as I've mentioned before. My spouse works at the hospital, and so I'm very familiar with the situation that he sees when he's there all the time. I'm not sure what we can do to help, but I'm glad to lend our support if we can. Steve, I will be contacting you. We'll get together and talk about what the issues that you had to raise, and I appreciate administration for taking care of the gentleman's concerns who was here as well. That's all for me. Tonight we have our planning director, Yorick Stevens-Wajda, here, and I think we're going to get an update on the Everett Station District, or Everett District Alliance. And I also see
yes.
We have other guests. Thank you.
Thank you, Council President Stone Cipher, members of the council. I'm Yorick Stevens-Wajda, the Planning Director. I'd like to introduce Brock Howell. He's the Executive Director of the Everett Station District Alliance, and he's going to give a presentation to the council on some excellent work that's been coming out of that organization for a number of years and ongoing. I think the focus of it is the Convergence Everett Station transit-oriented development study that was developed, partially supported by a Washington Department of Commerce grant in 2020, involved a lot of outreach within the local community and developed a set of actions. Just wanted to talk briefly from the perspective of the planning department in the city. This is I see it personally, I guess, as an excellent piece of work, and it's something that we're going to take into strong consideration, the recommendations therein, as part of the comprehensive plan update process. It's been a little bit since we've given you an update on that, and it's probably going to be time fairly soon to give another update on how the progress of that project is going. It's 2021 to 2024, so a multi-year process. We'll be updating the comprehensive plan and hitting the community and listening to folks from all over the city about suggestions and concepts for the future, hopes and dreams and all of that. I think the action plan in here, there are a lot of the recommendations, there's a lot of the analysis that's going to feed very well into that comprehensive plan update. Touches on land use, touches on transportation, touches on catalyst properties. I don't want to take much more of the presentation that Brock is going to give, but I just wanted to give my thanks for this body of work, and to let you know that this is something that we're going to take very seriously as we work through the comprehensive plan update. And you can expect to hear more about how that might fold into the final product in a couple of years. Without any more of that ado, Brock, take it away.
Thank you. Thank you, Council President Stone Cipher and members of the. Thank you, Council President Stone Cipher and members of the council. Again, my name is Brock Howell. I'm the Executive Director of the Everett Station District Alliance. And I want to recognize somebody who's not in the room but is watching, Kathy Solberg of Common Unity Consulting, who has been helping the ESDA launch the Convergence Collaborative. Tonight, I'll provide a brief background. I think, excellent, okay. I'll provide a brief background on the neighborhood, our organization, and then focus on the 2021 study. And finally, our work this year to establish a multi-year community collaborative based in a social impact for equitable development model called the Convergence Collaborative. From this, I hope you'll have a greater understanding of our work and hopefully continue to build stronger support from the city for it. First off, a bit of our geography. As you know, the Everett Station District is not officially designated as a neighborhood of the city. Instead, we are more similar to how the Downtown Everett Association self-identifies its borders and then has some structure to it. In general, we think of our district as centered around Everett Station and the future light rail terminus with boundaries that extend from Broadway to I-5 and Hewitt to 41st Street. The neighborhood has portions that are in the Port Gardner and Riverside neighborhoods and Council Districts 1 and 2. In many ways, as a convergent hub of 10+ transit services and key roadway entry points from I-5 and US 2, we are a gateway into downtown. Our neighborhood is often visitors' first impression of Everett. We have a mix of distribution facilities, light and heavy industry, especially cabinetry and construction industry, related commercial activities, 2 hotels, 3 medical centers, 3 supportive housing and shelter facilities, and otherwise very few residents. Through city and regional plans, our neighborhood has long been slated for change. Here's a quick timeline. In 1996, the region's voters approved the Sound Move ballot measure, setting a vision for building a spine of light rail from downtown Tacoma to downtown Everett. In part with funding from Sound Move, transit service in Everett was realigned in 2002 with the opening of Everett Station in our neighborhood, making it a hub of Amtrak, Sounder, Everett Transit, and community transit. To capitalize on this investment, in 2005, the Everett City Council adopted the Everett Station Area Plan that sets a vision for mixed-use development. No zoning was changed at that time. However, the city pursues attracting UW to establish a North Sound campus on what's the city's public works properties east of the BNSF railroad tracks. This effort is abandoned in 2008. Later in 2008, the region's voters passed SE2, funding light rail to Linwood. In 2000, and I'm on the next slide. In 2012, Everett Transit sought to redevelop its main park and ride lot in front of Everett Station into a mixed-use, transit-oriented development. City Council approved an RFP, which received no responses at that time due to zoning limitations. In 2014, neighborhood businesses and property owners, nonprofit organizations, and other community leaders began meeting, and these meetings grew into what is now ESDA, and we became a 501c3 in 2017. Following the failed RFP, in 2015, the City Council rezones part of the neighborhood for residential development. Also in 2015, ESDA commissions Methuen to produce renderings of how the neighborhood could change over time. In 2016, Region's voters approved SD3, finally funding light rail to downtown Everett. Of course, it's supposed to come by 2036, but due to financial pictures, it's more like 2041 unless we make up a budget gap. In 2017, ESDA publishes its first report, Recommendations for Neighborhood Transformation. And in 2018, the city of Everett adopted the Metro Everett Plan, which rezoned the neighborhood for mixed-use, transit-oriented development and allowed taller buildings. In 2020, we published our Future Concepts Report that set goals for housing affordability and abundance from our perspective and conceptualized what development could look like and highlighted case studies from across the region. Later in 2020, we partnered with Housing Hope on a new study called Convergence Everett Station Area TOD Study. With the aid of consultants and many community members, the report is published in 2021, and we'll talk about that more in a second. And so we've arrived at 2022. Sound Transit has finally begun its initial planning work on the Everett Link extension, and the city of Everett is starting its comprehensive plan work that's due in 2024. So Sound Transit is scheduled to transition from planning to design and engineering in 2026 and then begin construction in 2030. So that we have a lot of time now to plan ahead. But based on this quick history, there's been a lot of ups and downs in trying to capitalize on the hope of Everett Station and the future light rail. And so it's clear that we need a better effort among the community as a partnership, public-private partnership, to make this a reality. So before I get going on that study and the collaborative, I want to provide a quick update on ESDA's other activities. We've been conducting quarterly volunteer litter cleanups, facilitating communication around safety issues. We just had a community advisory group select 4 artists for murals that are going to go up in the next year. We're really excited about that. And we have now collected the signed support of nearly 70% of the future assessed value for a business improvement area. And so we hope to bring that in the next month to you with the BI ordinance. So on to the study. The study looked at how to catalyze a hub for green, equitable, and employment-based focused economic development. The study was commissioned by Housing Hope, with ESDA providing strategic direction and community engagement, and a consultant team of Northwest Studio, Heartland, Nelson Nygaard, and MIG conducting technical research and writing. It was funded by the Department of Commerce and the JP Morgan Chase Foundation. As a recommendation report to the City of Everett, it focused on publicly owned properties. Initially, the study was to focus only on West Lot A, which is the park and ride directly in front of Everett Station, but it was expanded when city staff suggested that the east side also be included in the study. It's not an attempt to supplant any of the city's long-range planning process, but to inform actions it could take. Housing Hope's primary interest was getting recommendations on how the city could catalyze development with West Lot A, and also with that was consideration of a private property adjacent to it in 32nd Street. Beyond that one private parcel, no other private parcels were looked at for the project. We had robust stakeholder engagement. So ESDA ensured this robustness with well over 200 people involved through various meetings, including an equity committee, 8 technical focus groups, briefing to public officials, a Urban Land Institute technical assistance panel, focus groups with our light industry businesses, and with the adjacent property owners. In addition, we did other community engagement through an online survey and then general public meetings. Encouraging mixed-use development will be critical to meeting our city's and region's housing and jobs needs. Under the region's Vision 2050 plan, Everett is targeted to grow by 87,000 residents and 89,000 workers. Vision 2050 also calls for 65% of population growth and 75% of employment growth to occur within a walking distance of high-capacity transit, such as future light rail stations like ours. Luckily, as our study showed, there's plenty of capacity to accommodate much of this growth within Everett Station District. Between the main park and ride lot and the Public Works campus, there's more than 2.5 million gross square feet of developable capacity within the city properties. With the potential relocation of Public Works to the Everett Point Industrial Center, development of these city-owned properties would mean zero displacement of existing residences or businesses, and this is really extremely unique across the region or even across the country in terms of thinking about equitable development. To guide the vision and the consultants' recommended strategies, the study had an equity committee that established 8 principles for equitable development. And that's just a key component to everything that we're doing here. With a vision informed by lead partners and the community engagement, the consultant conceptualized a development that was based on economics of economic reality, and this is a rendering of what they came up with. The sites were programmed with mixed income housing, a job center, childhood learning center, office space, open public space, and other amenities while protecting key freight access points and orienting the building design to protect existing nearby light industrial activities. The west and east sides were connected by a green loop for people walking and biking. And then we married the recommendations. There was a whole series of recommendations to the equity principles, ULI recommendations, and the City of Everett's planning documents to show the consistency and the priorities moving forward. And so this is quite detailed. So I will now begin to highlight just real briefly some of the recommendations that were pulled out in the report, which I think most of you have and can be accessed online. First is to designate freight priority streets within the neighborhood. To better support bicycling with an all ages and abilities bike network and better bike parking and a community bike shop. To ensure freight, transit, biking, and walking can coexist. To upgrade stormwater management with rain gardens. To adjust existing zoning to allow more ground floor light industry, human services, and small-scale residential development that's not actually allowed under Metro Everett. Invest in more open space improvements. And this is the big one. Develop Westlight A into Convergence Place, an equitable development in partnership with private developers and nonprofit social service providers for housing, early learning, nonprofit offices, and amenities. Transform 32nd Street into a pedestrian priority street. This is actually two images from once from a previous report. Pursue district energy and mass timber as a model for sustainable development. Aggressively limit the amount of parking built in the neighborhood, instead prioritizing housing and jobs and encouraging people to walk, bike, and take transit instead. So that's a lot of recommendations. I'm not expecting you to absorb all of that right now. But the consultants did pull out 5 key near-term recommendations, and I'm just going to briefly highlight them here. First is support the existing local light industry and manufacturing businesses. I already covered some of the recommendations there. 2 is develop neighborhood-specific plans around key elements, and I'll highlight governance as one, as you're redeveloping of potentially having a public development authority. Number 3, establishing that convergence place development. 4, creating the public realm loop. And 5, seeing what the private market is interested in or other institutions are interested in for the Cedar Street campus. Those were the big 5 for near-term recommendations. Those were folded into a bigger picture of timing how the redevelopment could happen over the life of the neighborhood, 30 or so years. But what we know is these are just recommendations on paper. And while we can get them into the comp plan, we do need more than that, and we need to have a partnership. And so immediately following the report, we started thinking about how do we do that? And ESDA is an advocate, and we want to provide services, but we weren't necessarily the right forum to make sure everybody's co-owners in the future of our neighborhood. So we started thinking about creating a community collaborative, and that's where the idea of a convergence collaborative came forth. Luckily, we have a great partner. We were fortunate to gain the financial support of Kaiser Permanente to use 2022 to plan out the Convergence Collaborative into a multi-year effort. KP is making a major expansion to his campus in the Everett Station District and want to be part of making sure that is an equitable neighborhood over time. What is a community collaborative for equitable development? Community collaboratives for equitable development are place-based partnerships between a lead community-based organization and government agencies, private sector institutions, and nonprofit social service and advocacy organizations. They seek to authentically engage residents and workers of a neighborhood to create and implement action plans that will improve the neighborhood across multiple issues. Importantly, the collaborative is a way for community and government to co-create and implement a shared vision through shared decision-making on key decisions. In putting together our collaborative, we looked to several resources. We started with the academic recommendations from Stanford Social Innovation Program, the Tamarack Institute, and Collective Impact Forum. We commissioned a UW study to analyze 17 collaboratives across the US that were funded by JP Morgan Chase Foundation to understand best practices in real life, as well as the City of Seattle's Equitable Development Initiative that partners with community-based organizations. And of course, we have a great partner here that's really versed in these, which is the United Way of Snohomish County. Why do we call it the Convergence Collaborative? It's an ode to our convergent zone weather pattern. Of course, we have these 2 weather patterns that when they converge, we get rain to dump right here in Everett. That's pretty unique to us. It also highlights our neighborhood as a convergence of transit, of gateway roadways, our neighborhood's railroad paths with this light rail future, our past heavy and light industry with their future mixed residential, commercial, and industrial uses, and as a collaborative, the convergence of businesses, nonprofits, and public agencies for a common purpose. In thinking about our structure, We have an equity committee to guide everything that we do, to set principles and hold us accountable to those equity principles. A leadership advisory council that will set governance, vision, and collective strategic planning. And work groups that set the strategic plans for specific issues on subject areas and to implement those work plans. So far, a nonprofit social services work group and workforce development work group have met and established their strategic priorities for the next 3 years, and an equity committee has begun reviewing their principles. The Leadership Advisory Council will meet soon. Any business, organization, or agency that agrees with the vision and the values of the collaborative can become a partner. As a partner of the collaborative, each becomes a co-owner. All partners retain their control over their own strategic plans, and they decide how and when to participate in certain aspects of the collaborative. Although convened and facilitated by ESDA, the ESDA does not dictate what other partners must agree to, and likewise, decisions of the Leadership Advisory Council don't dictate what individual partners must do either. The collaborative is a constant conversation that aims to align our individual missions and strategic plans towards a common purpose. Our equity principles would continue to guide us, and right now we're starting with the equity principles that were adopted through the study. Some of the priorities that have been established, that are being talked about, is Convergence Place, the redevelopment of West Lot A, establishing new community development institutions and tools, creating a workforce development hub, a health and safety initiative to make sure our neighborhood is safe, and some activation. And we're starting to work on the other priorities listed there, and I don't, without the equity committee having signed off on the principles, I don't want to say that they're final. So where are we now? We just started the process of formalizing our partnerships with our organizations that have been engaged. And so those organizations are signing letters of agreement. So far, we have WCU Everett, Compass Health, Everett Gospel Mission, Housing Hope, ML Fox Woodwork, and Axiom Construction as some of the partners. So it's a big diversity of institutions. And there's a lot more players that are at the table right now, since we just had the letter go out last Friday for them to sign. So we're really excited about it, and we're really excited for the potential for the city to partner on this in a leadership capacity through the Leadership Advisory Council and helping us with the governance of the structure, because there's so many big decisions that need to happen for our neighborhood. So with that, just thank you so much for your time. Hopefully I didn't go too much over.
Thank you, and I'll go down the line and see if we have any questions, starting with Council Vice President Tui.
Thank you, Council President. Thank you, Brock, for this update. I know I've been here for a while. We've heard several watched the progress of your organization. So I have a question on the letter of agreement. Now, is that like a membership that they become with you, with your organization, or is it just no financial?
Yeah, there's no financial commitment.
Okay.
We would probably do something a little different with the city, for sure, but other partners, and it's an expression of agreement towards the vision and the values. It doesn't limit the ability for that organization to go create other partnerships. It's not a binding thing, and it's not a financial commitment.
Okay.
We're using existing resources. Obviously, we want to build more resources and bring more resources to the table. But a big part of this is aligning our strategic plans into a common vision, right? So that's a big part. And it's not a membership in the ESDA. This is a membership with the Convergence Collaborative as the platform.
Okay, all right, thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you, Councilmember Ryan.
Thank you. Thanks, Brock, for being here. I think this is my third or fourth time with the presentation, so well done as always. I wanted to thank you for your hard work on all this, and also the mention for the cleanups that happened down along Smith Street. There's one this Saturday. If anybody would like to join, I will be there with my rain poncho on and happy to participate. I also appreciate the mention about the extensive public stakeholder engagement and how early in the process it is, since it is quite a ways out, to make sure that the neighborhoods and the folks that are in the area, that their opinions and their suggestions are included. And then in light of today's smoke and climate change, I this will probably be something I'll talk to York about extensively, about ways that we can incentivize any new buildings to have limited impacts on the environment and decarbonization or just clean energy of new buildings in the area. So question for Lori and for York, what are some ways that the city could partner on this, on the Convergence Collaborative Initiative?
I hadn't thought much about the Convergence Collaborative Initiative. Actually, this is my first time seeing the presentation. I've focused mainly on the plan and its relationship to the comprehensive plan effort and the light rail station siting effort and all of those kind of on-the-ground planning efforts. But as far as participation in the collaborative, I think its goal is to advance the recommendations in this. So it's definitely something that I think I talk with Brock a lot. We're going to be hosting a transit-oriented development walking tour this Friday, set up by the Puget Sound Regional Council, and so I think I will definitely be staying in touch with the effort, but that's as far as I know right now.
And I would just add that I think that we look at this similarly to all other areas in the city, whether it's a neighborhood or whether it's the Downtown Business Association, and how we can partner and work together. This is in a similar way. And I know Nick has been more involved with Brock on this, so I'd be happy to have him follow back up with you as well.
Great. Yeah, I do think that with the work that the ESDA has been doing in the area, it's a very tight three-legged race would be helpful to make sure that we get across the finish line in time for light rail when it shows up. So I would love to see ways that the city could help coordinate efforts. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Vogely.
Thanks for coming down or over. I don't know if anybody saw me, but I was like, yeah. When I saw the walkable area, I don't remember which slide it's in here. I just wanted to say that out loud in case you were really looking at your notes. Have you considered, I know that you've been working on this for like ever, and now that the Bezos Academy is going into the station, does that change anything at all?
I'm personally very excited about having that activation on the ground floor of that building and having a whole new set of folks that are engaged in the neighborhood. They have an outdoor play yard that's there. I know you approved the contract a while ago. And you saw some of the renderings. I just got to see it from Tom Hinkson's office the other day, and it looks great. Half of it was done. It looked great. I don't know the timing of when it opens. I'm looking forward to next summer. Hopefully the farmers market is back. And maybe thinking as, from our study, there was a recommendation for the evolution of 32nd Street, and maybe we could start that next summer as well and start that pedestrianization of the neighborhood with some pilot projects.
Thank you. And I know that there have been a possibility of a business DBA, but that's down. Yeah. So for those that don't know what DBA stands for, why don't you tell us?
Yeah. So Business Improvement Area.
That's
or
the
BIA,
one.
Is it's a legal entity that's set up by the city, but it's at the behest of property owners who want to assess themselves for their common good. And so we have floated a proposal to our property owners this year. We also did it in 2019. This year's proposal has the support of property owners, private property owners representing nearly 70% of
Okay, that was at the
future
very
assessed
beginning.
value. So we are very excited. That's over a legal threshold. We were over a legal threshold back in June, and we submitted it to the city at that time, and we're hoping for a November timeframe for this. So
I
I'll
guess
follow up
my-
with the legal team after this.
Sorry to interrupt. My basic question is the community collaborative, it's different than the BIA,
Yeah.
but it's going to work together.
Absolutely.
Okay, that's all you
absolutely.
need to go into.
Yep.
That's all, thanks.
Thank you, Councilmember Zarlingo.
One question. I guess I first met with Ed Peterson in December, so learned about the district. Are the district boundaries a little bigger now than Ed had talked about then?
Well, so we don't have, mean, we have boundaries that we think of, but there's not necessarily a legal hard and fast boundary to us. Where generally is Broadway to I-5 and Hewitt to 41st Street is our generalized. And as we have conversations with like the BIA and who wants to be served in it, you know, that's a different question than just us making sure that we're looking out for the betterment of the neighborhood generally. So
how are
that's
the
general
boundaries of the boundaries you just talked about, but the BIA boundaries, are they the same? Are they different?
They are different, yeah. So I hopefully will be able to provide a whole new presentation on what those look like and why they look that way.
Okay.
Yep.
And then I guess one other, partly comment, partly a question, and it's a question if I've got this wrong, but we tend to think about the Sound Transit and Light Rail and being ready when that all happens, but being ready when that happens really means a lot of people, us and others, will be making decisions and investments long before that happens. There'll be bus service, there's train service. When it's clear that where things will be, there will be transit-oriented development coming in there because people want to be part of that. I guess that's how I see this, is really this stuff starts now. I mean, it isn't 2041, 2036, it's long before that.
That's right, yeah. I think for me, a really good example, if you're looking for a specific geography and how it developed, is the Spring District in Bellevue. It's another light industrial neighborhood. Years before light rail opened, they've seen a complete transformation within the quarter-mile radius of that station, and the station doesn't open until 2024 now. So it is pretty remarkable, and that's the same sort of strategic thinking that we like to see here.
And there is some industrial development, I think, like Everett Steel or something on one of those places that I've been to before. So I assume those kinds of things would stay or evolve depending on commercial interests, the owner's willingness, whatever other alternatives are there. Okay.
And we fully support our businesses continuing their operation as they feel. They provide important jobs to the city, and so it should be up to the business owner and the property owner as to the future of their site. Now, I think this is where the study comes in, because the city is in a unique position because it has kind of underutilized properties that aren't private property that it can redevelop and provide mixed-use development for housing and for jobs without displacing any business.
Okay. So. And the last thing, it seems like these sort of redevelopments, there's kind of a clumsy middle where you go from something that's pretty much all private cars to a hoped-for visioned future of when there are almost no private cars and it's all transit and bicycles and walking and that sort of thing. But the tough thing is the middle time, especially we're near an interstate and a bunch of major streets, those are all cars. So when we take away parking and redevelop that for something else, I guess I'll be looking to see if we form a plan that gets us around that, because some things have come around before when there just is an assumption that right away we're not going to need any parking, and no parking is provided. There's a lot of blowback because people can't make it work in the meantime. I guess is the orthodoxy in this that we find ways through that, and that's part of the plan?
Absolutely. So if the site does get redeveloped of West Lot A, it requires a waiver from the Federal Transit Administration because they helped fund that site originally. Early indications, my understanding is that they're supportive of that idea. We got to present them a legitimate case for how transit trips would be replaced with the development versus the car-oriented transit trips that are generated. So the study goes into great detail about transportation demand management strategies that could be explored and implemented.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's important because I've just seen these things have huge problems before when that middle ground in time just wasn't visible.
Yep.
Thanks.
Councilmember Fossey.
Could you let us know how one could participate in the cleanup this Saturday?
I would love to. So the sign up is on our website, and that's going to be the easiest because the URL I have no idea in my head. The other thing is you could just show up at 9:30 in front of Everett Station. That would be good with me, although I certainly would like to tell the city of Everett, who their Adopt a Street program, how many people we're expecting so they can provide the number of tools. But it's 9:30 in front of Everett Station, or you can go to our website to sign up,
Okay.
which is everettstationdistrict.com.
Okay, thank you. Well, you know, I've been a fan of the convergence study. And this area is just, it's such a critical area with so many things coming together, and I really appreciate that, what you're doing, because so there's a vision kind of taking into account, you know, housing and important amenities that we need, like early learning and climate and economic development and, you know, the freight routes, like including that. It's just, it's very intentional planning, and yeah, I'm a fan. Thank you for the inclusion of the equity principles, even though you sped through that. So I'm looking forward to future update on what those kind of are finalized as. The convergence collaboration just seems like a really great intentional idea. And I would be interested also being included on that follow-up from Nick that you were going to provide, Councilmember Ryan, and be included on that. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Schwab.
Yeah, thanks for the presentation. I really appreciate your organization. I'd like to step back a little bit. The Everett Station District Alliance, is it funded by all the businesses in that area, or?
We would like to be close to that, and that's what the business improvement area is for. We are funded currently through memberships, which are at the high price of $25. Entities have a $100 entity membership.
Okay.
And then sponsorships and grants. And for this, I'm not a full-time employee, but our major contributor this year is Kaiser Permanente to help support the development of the collaborative. In addition, we have a nice support from several public agencies, including Everett Transit, Sound Transit, Community Transit, and some from the PUD and from PSRC. So we're very appreciative of our public supporters as well.
Well, that's an impressive list, thank you. A couple of the questions, just briefly about the plan. One end that I know is that they put Housing Hope headquarters there in one location. Is that just a concept, or could it be moved other places on your plot?
Yeah, it's a concept. It's definitely a concept.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll just add just two other questions about the concept. From your point of view, would a WSU campus extension be a good that'd be a good location for it?
Possibly. I'm not going to go on record for any particular institution. What we do know.
There's only a few of them.
I know. I went to WSU, so you know my allegiances are with WSU.
What a four-year university that had interest in Everett, would that be a good location?
What I will say is it's been on the east property. There obviously was strong interest between 2005 and 2008 for a higher education institution that didn't proceed forward, and instead Everett got WSU Everett. And WSU Everett is at the table with us, and they're certainly looking at their own campus needs. And so if they're interested in that, I would expect them to be having conversations with the city, and probably not with me, but I would certainly play my role if asked to. So.
Thank you for that. Good answer. And then I guess the third question I had, you left out some space on Hill Street. I guess that'd be the west side of Hill. Is that's
West
privately owned property then?
West side of Hill Street. Let me, can I? Do you mean the park and ride lot?
Is that all that is? Is just parking now?
So,
I just
I
noticed
see.
that there's a space there that wasn't part of your concept.
Yeah, so that the city property is between Pine and Hill, and
Yeah.
is on both sides of Cedar. On the west side of Hill Avenue is Everett Steel,
Right.
drive lines, and built industry, or built design.
Right.
And we were not looking at private property as part of this. And I think other planning exercises may look at a little bit broader than this, but we didn't feel it was, we were focused mostly, initially on the West Lot A site, and then had some recommendation to look at the other city properties to help inform the city. And we didn't want to go beyond that to.
Well, you surrounded them with your plans. That's why I was wondering if they were part of your concept ideas. And
Well, what I say is, although they're not looked at for like the building up the site of like what the buildings could be and how they could be programmed, all of the neighborhood was looked at in the sense of how do we support the growth of the neighborhood or protect the existing industries. And so we did specifically look at how do we protect that industrial activity if they so wish to continue to do that. And so we looked at priority streets, we looked at step backs, we looked at how do we change the zoning of ULI to be more adaptable for industrial uses on the ground floor and the space considerations, that if that was built, say, on Hill Avenue, then you would have more compatible uses across the street from one another. So it was considered in that context, but we weren't going to propose to a private owner, hey, we want to develop your property. That wasn't going to be our thing.
thanks.
Yeah.
And I don't have very many more questions. I just wanted to thank you for being here tonight, Brock. And obviously you've been slogging at this for quite a while. Back in 2019, there were, obviously we had a lot of discussion amongst some of the property owners there. And one of the concerns that was raised was just sort of upzoning and then creating an environment where businesses would technically be able to stay, but there would be such a compulsion for them not to stay in the region because, or in their location there because of the upzone creates such a pressure for higher development. I haven't read the plan yet. Have we effectively addressed that in a way that those property owners feel mollified by the solutions, or where are we?
Yeah, our plan is a community-based idea more than anything. And so we still have to go through that. If we want to do the things that are recommended in the report, it still needs to go through the comp plan and through zoning changes or the development regulations, whatever the changes that we need are. So that hasn't happened to the extent that they were recommended in the plan, that piece. The plan itself does call for protecting our light industrial users south of 33rd Street.
Okay.
So that's just south of West Lot 8, basically. And the Hill Avenue block that you described because of the importance of Everett Steel and the businesses along there. Allowing them, any of those parcels south of there could choose to do other uses as well, and that's acceptable. But we wanted to make sure that from a land use perspective and from a policy perspective, we're making sure that the policy is aligned for that they can continue to do the activities that they want to do there. We did see right after the adoption of the Metro Everett rezone, we had one property owner who filed their application for a redevelopment like the next day, and they weren't able to do what they wanted to do because the new laws kicked in, and that caused a lot of anguish directed at the city, at ESDA, others, because of that process that we've been wrestling with since. I think that's the type of thing we're trying to wrestle with, and making sure that those light industrial users can adapt their business over time and continue to do it. It's one thing to say you can continue to do it, but if you change, then you can't change, versus you can continue your service and you can evolve over time. And I think that's what some of the recommendations are trying to get at.
Mm-hmm. And that's been the city's practice as long as I've been around here, so. Okay, that sounds great. Well, thank you again for being here tonight. So the next thing that we will hear is probably from Yorick and your team talking about the comp plan and how this will dovetail into that.
Yeah, I'd love to work with you on scheduling some time to give you a progress update on that project.
Sounds great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have an administrative update this evening?
No update tonight.
Thank you. And City Attorney Hall, what do you have for us this evening?
No report, no executive session.
Music to my ears. Do I have a motion for the 8 consent agenda items?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to adopt the consent agenda. Clerk, will you please take the roll?
Councilmember Tui?
Yes.
Councilmember Ryan?
Yes.
Councilmember Vogely?
Yes.
Councilmember Zarlingo?
Yes.
Councilmember Fosse?
Yes.
Councilmember Schwab?
Yes.
Vice President Tui? President Tui? President Stonecipher?
Yes. And I wasn't even thinking. I was like, I don't hear my name yet. I don't say yes. We have one proposed action item, Council Bill 2210-42. It's been read into the record already, so do we have any questions on this item tonight? We'll move on to our action agenda. Item 10 is Council Bill 2210-41, third and final reading. Adopt an ordinance relating to Uniform Code Enforcement Procedures, repealing Everett Municipal Code Chapter 1.20, adopting a new Chapter 1.20, and amending other portions of the Everett Municipal Code to update applicable cross-references. And before I take a motion, I wanted to call on City Attorney Hall, who has a comment for us.
Yes, ordinance is going to affect 15 days after being signed by the mayor unless otherwise specified in the ordinance. It has become apparent to the building official and others that it would be quite handy if this went into effect January 1, 2023. It would allow the code enforcement unit and the hearing examiner some time to prepare for the new procedures. It would avoid having to implement this during the holidays. It would make record keeping easier if it started on January 1 rather than some arbitrary date late in the year. So we're hoping that, Council President, you will call for a motion to amend the proposed ordinance to add a new section 7 stating this ordinance shall go into effect January 1, 2023.
Thank you. Is it necessary for us to first make a motion on the original and then make the amendment?
Good question. I don't think so.
Okay. Do I hear a motion to adopt Council Bill 2210-41 with the proposed amendments stated by City Attorney Hall?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Do we have anyone signed up to speak on this tonight, Angie? Okay, thank you. Do we have any questions on this item tonight before we call the roll?
Just a quick comment.
Councilmember Ryan.
For the team, I would recommend that earlier this year we passed the ARPA dollars to help with improving code compliance and adding staff and it's late. Just tightening up the seams in the process, and it sounds like the C-Click Fix app is going to help with streamlining processes, so I would encourage staff to think about how to future trip and how that process could impact this process so they're not duplicating efforts. That's all.
That's good. Any other questions or comments?
One quick note from, along with Councilmember Fosse at our planning committee meeting, got a great briefing from Yorick and team. Thank you for dramatic, really long overdue improvements in the way we handle the code compliance. I think this is going to be much, much better than what we've had up until now.
Yeah. And Councilmember Vogely.
I concur with council members Zarlingo, et cetera, et cetera. I am very excited for you and us in Everett. And January 1st, okay.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Is there
Councilmember Fosse?
any, I guess, effort or somebody that'll be presenting this to neighborhoods? I know a lot of my neighbors were interested in the changes that were happening, and I didn't know if there was any outreach of what the changes would be.
Tony Lee, Public Works. Is our intention to, if this passes and once this passes, hopefully, to work with the mayor's office and get the word out? However, administration sees fit to help us with that endeavor, we welcome totally.
Fantastic, thank you.
Be great to have like a one-pager or something of what's new, something like that. So we'll talk with administration about that. I think that'd be handy to hand out at the neighborhood meetings, put on websites.
That's a great idea.
Thank you. We weren't trying to keep this a secret.
Any other questions or comments? Clerk, will you please take the roll?
Councilmember Tui.
Yes.
Councilmember Ryan.
Yes.
Councilmember Vogely.
Yes.
Councilmember Zerlingo.
Yes.
Councilmember Fosse.
Yes.
Councilmember Schwab.
Yes.
President Stonecipher.
Yes, now we will go on to our briefing agenda. This item comes before the City Council serving as a committee of the whole and is likely to be scheduled at a future meeting. After the briefing, any members of the public wishing to speak on this item will be invited to do so. And I'll read the item 11, Council Bill 2210-43. This is a first reading. Approve an ordinance relating to animal control, amending EMC Chapter 6.04 and 6.08.025. And our third and final reading will be on November 2nd. And we have Glynis Frederickson, Animal Services Manager, here to help us understand this.
Glynis Frederickson, Animal Services Manager. I'm here to update council on a few changes we would like to make to Title VI of the Everett Municipal Code. Okay. EMC 6.04 contains animal control ordinances which address pet licensing, different types of kennel and livestock permits, nuisance and animal cruelty cases, animal impounds, sheltering, and the dangerous dog ordinance. There have been some changes to state law, and we wanted to take the opportunity to review all of 6.04 and also correct a small error in 6.08.
Sorry to interrupt. Would you put the mic a little bit closer to
sorry.
your speaking apparatus?
Is that better? Can you hear me? Okay.
Thank you.
The smoke makes it hard to project. Sorry. As far as process, Animal Services staff researched ordinances from neighboring municipalities, worked with input from the Animal Shelter Advisory Board and Flora Diaz in our attorney's office. In addition to compliance with state law, we're proposing changes we believe will improve operational efficiency, strengthen enforcement tools, and improve our residents' quality of life. In the following slides, I'll present an overview of the changes proposed. Flora is also here if there are any questions. We have made the EMC consistent with second-degree animal cruelty in state law, which is a gross misdemeanor. Currently, most animal cruelty violations in the EMC are only misdemeanors. By the way, this does not change the fact that we do refer any cases to county prosecutors for first-degree animal cruelty, which is a felony under state law. Civil penalties for cruelty convictions will be payable to the Everett Animal Shelter's Cumulative Reserve Fund 151, the Fund for Animals, as this continues our current practice of paying for the shelter's veterinary expenses through this fund. We are removing animal fighting, which is currently only a misdemeanor in the EMC. Animal fighting cases would be charged under the state RCW, which is a felony, and it has long been a felony. We're adding language from a newer state law that makes it a misdemeanor for anyone other than a licensed veterinarian to crop ears, dock tails, and debark dogs. And we are adding a bond requirement for animals that are seized during cruelty investigations. This means that owners would be responsible for paying for the animal's continued care during the court case. Currently, animals are sometimes held for years pending the outcome of cases. This will help cover the cost of holding animals for so long, and in some cases will allow animals to be freed up much sooner so they can be adopted. By the way, this particular dog had a very lengthy recovery process, but is doing great right now. Also, there was a minor edit in the proposed ordinance that was added after the draft was submitted for tonight's council packet. This addresses where the bond revenue will be posted, will be also to the Fund for the Animals, Fund 151. The addition will be reflected in the draft ordinance that will be posted online in the October 26th and November 2nd council agenda packets. Last year, the state prohibited the sale of dogs and cats from pet stores, with the exception of pet stores that were already selling dogs. We are not aware of any retail pet stores in Everett that currently sell dogs, cats, or rabbits. And as such, we would like to also prohibit the sales of rabbits in city pet stores. Rabbits have the third highest shelter intake numbers behind dogs and cats, and are increasingly subject to dumping in urban areas and parks. Larger pet supply chains such as Petco and PetSmart also have corporate policies prohibiting the sale of rabbits in their stores. In 2018, the state created a violation for misrepresenting an animal as a service animal. So if you try to take your dog into a place where they're not allowed, and you say it's a service animal, it would now be a civil infraction. This legislation is typically supported by people who actually have legitimate service animals. And probably not a week goes by that there is some type of a complaint about roosters to animal control. The state has the EMC has a strange kind of quirk in that we currently allow up to 5 roosters before they're prohibited. Virtually every incorporated municipality in our area prohibits roosters, and many often prohibit peacocks and peahens, which, in case you were wondering what a peafowl was, that's what those are. We will continue to allow the keeping of hens, which are currently regulated through small livestock facility permits. People may not know also there are currently a maximum of 2 dogs and or cats allowed in Everett households. Having 3 or more pets currently requires a hobby kennel license. We are proposing that this limit be increased to 4 pets, as long as all of the pets are spayed and neutered. And this is more in line with our surrounding cities, and I'm assuming that somebody might be out of compliance with.
I'm not.
Okay.
The cat lady.
Does that limit?
So many neighbors are.
Just saying.
Does that limit stay at 2 then if they're not all spayed or neutered?
The code wouldn't change, so right now, if there are more than, I believe, 2, and they're not altered, then it would be a breeder license or like a breeder kennel license for that. Currently, the Animal Services Manager is authorized to reduce or waive any shelter fees with a specific exception of pet license fees. So we may discount fees in the case of financial hardship, say for somebody reclaiming a lost pet. And we're proposing that this would also include pet license fees when warranted. We're removing non-jailable misdemeanors for certain repeat infractions. These are 2nd and 3rd violations within a 2-year period. Examples of these offenses are dogs at large, failure to pick up dog feces, or barking dogs, typically nuisance complaints. So if there are subsequent violations, these would simply be additional tickets rather than a misdemeanor. And I'm not exactly sure who the author was and what their intention was of adding invertebrates into the definition of animal, but we were removing that in terms of the scope of animals that Animal Services enforces. We are removing the reference to the regional pet licensing program between Everett and Snohomish County, as this is no longer in effect. And we are removing an outdated process that had the Animal Shelter Advisory Board hear appeals for denied facilities permits, say kennel licenses or livestock permits. And last but not least, we are correcting an omission in the last 6.08 ordinance update where we failed to include spay-neuter language for dogs declared dangerous or potentially dangerous. This is part of the dangerous dog ordinance that we have. And I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank
well,
you.
one of the last, go ahead.
Before we go to council comments and questions, I will ask Angie, do we have anyone signed up for public comment on this item tonight?
No, we do not.
Thank you. Now we'll open it up to council questions, and I think I'm going to go down the line because everybody looks like they want to speak. Councilmember or Vice President Tui.
I have no questions or comments, but thanks for the update. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Councilmember Ryan.
Yeah, thanks for the presentation tonight. I had some questions about dangerous dogs and how that's defined. I'm one of those folks that has a super dangerous pit bull. It's so dangerous. My children put scarves and tutus on it and all that fun stuff. So how is a dangerous dog defined, and what are some ways that this will impact that?
So we updated the Everett Municipal Code in 2019. Prior to that time, as you may know, pit bulls and pit bull mixes were considered potentially dangerous dogs. So we really, at that time, wanted to focus more on the behavior of the dog and what the dog was actually doing. So there are two different levels. There's potentially dangerous and dangerous. And I don't have the language, the specific language in front of me. This change doesn't affect that specifically, except for the requirements that we're imposing upon people that have dogs that have been declared either potentially dangerous or dangerous. So potentially dangerous is, for example, a bite or an attack on a human or another animal. A dangerous dog may be either a potentially dangerous dog that has had subsequent violations to this, or they either severely injured another animal or a person. So it's the level kind of severity, as well as if that animal continues to violate, then it can be escalated to a dangerous dog.
So it's not necessarily about the size, but more so about the behavior?
It's absolutely about what the dog is doing.
But would a smaller dog who's aggressive, so their aggression wouldn't necessarily create wounds or injuries, that wouldn't totally qualify then?
So potentially dangerous would be potentially a small dog. It could be a Chihuahua. We have a Frenchie, a French bulldog in the city that's actually been declared potentially dangerous. So it's more about what they are doing, and we look at the circumstances surrounding the incident. So if it was what we would consider to be a provoked bite, then, and what a reasonable person would consider to be, this animal was protecting its property, the person was not lawfully on the property, there was a dog fight between two dogs and somebody reached in and they tried to break it up and got bitten. Those are things that we probably would not consider that animal to be potentially dangerous or dangerous.
Okay. And then how would enforcement work on some of these different changes? Would it be through code compliance, or do you guys have animal control officers that get called out, and just what does the reporting structure look like in enforcement?
Sure, yeah, so we did up until recently have 3 animal control officers. Now we have 1, and we are filling a second position for that, but they do go out. They are granted the enforcement authority to enforce the animal control ordinance, and they can issue tickets, they can declare animals potentially dangerous or dangerous. The only change that this code proposal would affect would be the facilities permits that somebody may have appealed because they were denied, and in our current language it goes to the advisory board, and they're supposed to hear that, and this would actually change it to become the hearing examiner's responsibility.
Got it. Great, thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Vogtley.
Thank you for the presentation. This might be the most audible outbursts I've had with any presentation ever. So pardon me. Okay, so back to, what is the current limit for spayed and neutered animals in your yard, or in your household?
So right now, it doesn't matter if they are spayed or neutered, but it's 2, and then after, so if you have 3, then the code would suggest that you acquire a hobby kennel license.
Total animals that are allowed. So 2, period.
Dogs and or cats. So yes, the total number would, it
Not
could
2
be.
dogs and 2 cats.
Correct.
Or 2 dogs and 2 cats and 2 rabbits and 2 goats.
It does not specify rabbits if they're house bunnies.
Okay. Yeah, and the other outbursts were just, I can't believe some of the atrocities that happen to our animals, and it's disturbing. And I really look forward to finally going to a meeting with y'all next week. It's been a whole year and I haven't done that, so thank you for being here.
We look forward to it.
Councilmember Zarlingo.
One clarification, I guess the spay-neuter requirement in the dangerous dog ordinance is that, do I assume that means that if a dog is declared dangerous, then they must be spayed or neutered?
Correct, once they've gone through any appeal process.
And then the other one, I certainly resonate with the infraction for misrepresenting an animal as a service animal. The last time I looked at this stuff several years ago, it was a really hard thing to know what is a service animal. There was no universal registry. There was no way to know if something was or was not, and people were buying the little harnesses and jackets on eBay that said service animal. Do we have I mean, I'm all for having that sanction there. Do we have a practical way to determine it or enforce it?
So the ADA has specified what a service animal is, and it's basically a service dog or a service horse. And the state has put in, specific definitions which we would adopt into our code. There are only 2 questions that we can legally ask about what, I believe it's what the animal's trained to perform. And I can't recall the other one, but it's very clear. It's not about the disability, it's about what the animal's trained to perform. They're not required to be identified with a vest. There's no formal registry. A lot of the registration, that's sort of a scam, essentially. There's no need for that. But the animal does need to be specifically trained. It doesn't have to go through a professional training academy or anything like that, but it must be specifically trained to perform specific tasks, or, alert, like seizure alert, or picking things up off the floor. So there are very specific criteria about what that is.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Fosse.
I'm going to have eventually probably a couple more questions, but a quick note on Councilmember Ryan's dog is much more of probably a pussycat in my mind, but it still does not exceed the allowable number of animals. Is there any update of, so the household limit, it doesn't differentiate between fixed and non-fixed?
Currently, it does not.
Okay, but the change does?
The change does.
Okay.
So if someone has up to 4 spayed or neutered dogs and or cats total, then they can have that without requiring a facility permit or a
Okay.
hobby kennel license, basically.
What's in the case of somebody fostering a cat that has kittens?
That's a good point. That's actually not addressed specifically. Well, actually, I'll take that back. If the animal's under 6 months of age, it's considered a puppy or a kitten, and so it may not be eligible for licensing, so it may not be part of that requirement. So if it's underage. But this actually doesn't address the situation if someone was fostering, a dozen adult cats for some organization temporarily. That's a good point.
Okay.
Not that we suggest doing that.
No,
I'm not
no.
making a comment pro or against.
What happens for any of these changes that impact people that may have those animals, or when this goes into effect?
As far as the number of animals?
I don't want to use that term. What's a grandparented in clause? So say somebody has a peafowl or peacock or something like that.
That's a good question. I believe there is one in the city, and we've had ongoing complaints like for the last 7 years from that particular address. So if this, or when this goes into effect, we would ask them to rehome it. We don't currently have a grandfathering clause on here. That's something that we can certainly consider. In the case of roosters, yeah, I mean, that's something that we can consider.
Okay. And then the other question I had was when people are required to notify the animal shelter, which has, limited hours, or the police department after they hit an animal. what is the process? Because I've called before on some animal control things, and it was a little convoluted on who I was supposed to be calling or speaking to. I don't know if that's maybe more of a question for the police department, but it just says notifying. What is that process beyond that?
We would ask that somebody try to notify the shelter, leave a message if it's after hours, email us. We do work with a local vet hospital who has agreed to accept animals that are injured that are brought in after hours. I know that happens quite frequently. And then they work with us and notify us that they have an animal that needs to be picked up that's in their care.
So that wouldn't be a requirement, though, of the driver. That would be falling upon the Everett PD to arrange such a things, or animal
No,
control?
the driver could take the animal directly, or
They could.
Or they could call the police for assistance if necessary, if it's in traffic, for example. But we would ask that someone not just drive off.
Okay. It says report the accident to either. I don't know, the requirement of what somebody is supposed to do just seems a little bit vague on there. The other thing is for the exceptions under poison food or drink for animals, in that it doesn't apply to state licensed pest control operators performing this within the scope of employment. What about other people that may, instead of employing pest control, have, poisoned traps that they set
Specifically for
out, but
rodents,
it's not under an actual licensed pest control, but done by, homeowner or something like that?
That's a quite interesting concept. Yes, I think that there is certainly room in there to add that in, as far as if it is within the sort of the scope of its intention. So as far as, rat poison, or it's not intended to poison cats, for example, it's intended to poison mice. That's
Okay.
probably a good catch.
Okay, I'll have more later that are vague, but I can email you those on those.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
Councilmember Schwab.
Thank you. I guess I'll just ask one question. Have you done any research on the co-op on Pacific Avenue, that business, and what they sell? I mean, the only place I know that sells animals.
So my understanding, they accept rabbits that are brought in by members of the public for rehoming. They're not acquiring them from animal breeders or brokers for resale as pets. So it's, they're not acting in the capacity of a retail pet store. They're basically rehoming them.
Okay, thank you.
And I don't have any questions, but Glynis, thank you so much for being here, and thanks for your work on behalf of the animal shelter. It's such a great institution in our community, and really glad that we're cleaning some of these things up. And I would, for my purposes, I would say that I would not consider a grandfathering clause in this, because I think we've got a couple roosters out there that we keep hearing about, but I'm sure you do too.
Yes.
Yeah, we'd like to see them get a nice home on a farm somewhere where they can have all morning to cock-a-doodle-doo.
Duly noted, thank you.
Yes. And so, and we'll see you back on the 2nd for the final reading of this.
Thank you.
With that, we're at the end of our agenda. With no further business and no executive session, we are now adjourned.